Beloved, tonight we gather under the open heavens not by coincidence, but by divine appointment. There are moments in life when effort alone seems powerless, when you've worked, labored, planned, and yet the doors of provision remain shut. But hear me, there are realms where financial breakthrough is not a product of toil, but of divine favor. It is written that God gives power to get wealth, not merely through strength or strategy, but through His Spirit that opens unseen doors and multiplies small beginnings. This is not just another prayer session. It is a moment of alignment, where your faith, your obedience, and your voice will echo in the heavens. You may be surrounded by debts, by delay, by frustration. But tonight, your story will shift, because when God steps into your finances, scarcity bows, opportunities rise, and favor begins to speak your name in places your feet have never walked. We are not praying for money. We are calling for divine order. We are calling for wisdom, for ideas, for discipline, for divine connections. The same God who raised the poor from the dust, who turned fishermen into financiers of His kingdom, is still alive today, and He delights in blessing His people. So open your heart, silence your fears, and prepare your spirit. For in this prayer, we are not negotiating with circumstances. We are partnering with the Creator of all resources. Tonight, the chains of limitation will break, and the fragrance of abundance will rest upon your life. This is your hour of divine release, your season of supernatural increase. Get ready, because by the time this prayer is done, your hands will no longer be empty. Your destiny will begin to overflow. Every financial struggle is not just a lack of money, but often a spiritual blockage requiring divine intervention. Many people believe that money alone is the answer to every hardship, that if only they could earn more, save more, or find a better job, everything would fall into place. But life has a way of teaching us that sometimes no matter how hard we work, how disciplined we are, or how intelligent our strategies may seem, things still don't move. Doors stay closed, opportunities fade, and efforts seem to vanish like smoke in the wind. It is in these moments that we must understand: not all financial battles are fought on the surface. Some are fought in the unseen realm, where spiritual principles determine earthly outcomes. When a person faces constant financial difficulty despite being diligent and capable, it is a sign to look deeper. God designed the world to function by both physical and spiritual laws. Just as gravity governs the natural realm, obedience, faith, and alignment with divine will govern the spiritual. Financial struggles can often be symptoms of spiritual disorder, areas where our connection with divine purpose has weakened or where unseen resistance stands in the way of our progress. It is not always about the economy, not always about connections or qualifications. Sometimes it is a reflection of battles we have not yet confronted in the spirit. There are people who have all the skill in the world yet remain in lack. There are others who seem to do so little yet experience continual overflow. It is not luck. It is the difference between operating under open heavens and struggling beneath spiritual resistance. There are power systems and cycles that can keep a person bound financially, not because they lack ability, but because something has been closed over their life. When the spiritual dimension is neglected, financial effort becomes like sowing seeds on concrete, full of effort but producing no harvest. Divine intervention begins when a person recognizes that money is not just a physical commodity, but a spiritual tool. It is a servant, not a master. When you make wealth your pursuit instead of God, you disconnect from the source of true provision. But when you seek God first, He releases wisdom, favor, and opportunities that money itself cannot buy. The heart of financial breakthrough lies in spiritual positioning, in surrendering the idea that you alone can fix it, and instead inviting God to become the architect of your provision. In the Holy Scriptures, we see countless examples of this truth. There was a widow who had only a small jar of oil, yet through divine instruction, that oil multiplied until her debts were cleared and her household lacked nothing. There was a fisherman who toiled all night and caught nothing, but one word from the master, "Cast your net on the other side," turned his failure into abundance. These stories remind us that divine direction can do in one moment what years of human effort cannot. When God speaks into your finances, lack must respond, because creation itself obeys his command. Many of us pray for more money, but God often answers by sending correction, wisdom, and order. He may show you areas of disobedience, misplaced priorities, or wrong associations that are blocking his blessing. Sometimes the issue is not what you lack, but what you refuse to release. Greed, pride, and fear can all close the flow of divine provision. That is why prayer is powerful. It purifies the heart and aligns it with divine will. When your motives are right and your heart is positioned in faith, God begins to move things in your favor. Financial breakthrough begins in the mind before it manifests in the hand. If you see yourself as defeated, unworthy, or incapable, your actions will mirror that belief. The spirit of poverty does not begin with empty pockets. It begins with a mindset that rejects growth, stewardship, and faith. When you pray, you are not just asking God for supply. You are asking him to renew your thoughts, to open your eyes, and to break every invisible ceiling over your life. A man who carries revelation cannot remain poor for long, because divine wisdom is wealth in seed form. There are also ancestral patterns and generational limitations that must be broken through prayer. Some families live under invisible patterns where wealth never stays, where every gain is followed by loss, where success seems to vanish overnight. These are not coincidences. They are cycles sustained by spiritual agreements and covenants. But when a person begins to stand in prayer, calling upon the name of God, those patterns begin to break. The light of God exposes every hidden chain, and the blood of his mercy speaks deliverance. You must never forget that the goal of divine prosperity is purpose. God blesses you so that you can become a channel of blessing. When your desire for breakthrough is rooted in selfish ambition, the flow of divine resources remains limited. But when you say, "God, make me a vessel of provision, use my life to touch others," heaven takes interest in your cause. Because divine resources are always attracted to divine purpose. God funds what glorifies him, and he sustains what serves his kingdom. So when you find yourself facing financial struggle, do not only run to banks or people, run first to the altar of prayer. Ask God to reveal what you cannot see, to show you the spiritual roots of your challenge, and to give you the grace to break free. Every delay, every stagnation, every closed door responds to the authority of prayer. There are things you cannot earn your way into. They must be unlocked by the power of divine favor. When you rise in prayer, you are not begging. You are enforcing covenant rights. You are declaring that the earth will yield her increase for you, that the heavens will release divine rain over your labor, that the work of your hands will prosper. You are speaking to the unseen, commanding alignment between heaven and earth. Financial breakthrough begins not in the market, but in the spirit. And when the spirit realm is settled, everything else begins to fall into place. True abundance flows when the heart aligns with obedience, gratitude, and trust in God's timing. So many people chase after wealth, striving endlessly for financial success, yet their souls remain weary and unsatisfied. They accumulate possessions, but their hearts are never at peace. This is because true abundance is not measured by numbers in a bank account. It is measured by the posture of the heart before God. Real prosperity begins when a person learns to align their spirit with obedience, to walk in gratitude even in lack, and to trust that God's timing is never late. Abundance is not just what you hold, it is who you have become in the process of trusting God. When the heart is not aligned with obedience, Even blessings can become burdens. There are people who receive increase, yet lose their peace because what they gained came through rebellion or impatience. You can have money and still live in scarcity if your heart is disconnected from divine order. God does not only want you to have wealth, He wants you to have peace, balance, and a relationship with Him that remains unshaken no matter the season. That is why obedience is the foundation of true prosperity. It is through obedience that we show God He can trust us with more. When He instructs you to give, to sow, to serve, or to wait, and you obey even when it is uncomfortable, you prove that your heart loves Him more than the blessing itself. And that kind of heart always attracts increase. Obedience is not just about following rules, it is about surrender. It is saying, God, I may not understand, but I trust you more than my logic. Sometimes, God tests your faith by asking you to release what seems small so He can entrust you with something greater. Many people pray for financial breakthroughs but resist divine instructions. They want God to bless them while they still hold on to disobedience, bitterness, or greed. But blessings don't flow where rebellion resides. Every time you obey, even in small things, you open a spiritual gate for favor to flow. Divine wealth follows divine order. Gratitude is another key that sustains abundance. In a world obsessed with more, gratitude keeps the heart humble and content. When you thank God for the little you have, you attract more. But when you complain, you repel blessings. Gratitude is a seed that multiplies what you honor. A grateful person never stays small because thanksgiving invites the presence of God, and wherever His presence dwells, increase follows. Many people delay their next level because they keep murmuring about where they are. You cannot complain your way into abundance. You can only praise your way there. Even when it feels like doors are slow to open, gratitude says, God, I know you are working something good behind the scenes. That attitude releases joy, strength, and favor in unseen ways. When you look through sacred history, every man and woman who walked in divine abundance had one thing in common. They trusted God's timing. Abraham waited years before the promise manifested. Joseph endured seasons of hardship before stepping into his destiny. Even the prophet had moments of silence and testing before his ministry flourished. God's timing may not align with your desires, but it is always perfect. When you try to rush divine timing, you step into realms that your character cannot sustain. Many people have lost what they prayed for because they received it too early. Waiting on God is not delay, it is preparation. He uses time to shape your heart, to mature your faith, and to ensure that when the blessing arrives, you are ready to carry it with wisdom. Trusting God's timing requires faith, patience, and surrender. It means saying, God, I may not see the full picture, but I believe you know what's best for me. When you reach that place, anxiety loses its power. You stop comparing your journey with others. You stop feeling left behind. You realize that divine timing is customized. What takes someone a month may take you a year, but when it comes, it will come with peace and permanence. God does not just give blessings, He gives them in seasons that protect you from destruction. True abundance, therefore, is a balance of three virtues: obedience, gratitude, and trust. They are not just spiritual words, they are principles that govern increase. When you walk in obedience, you position yourself to receive. When you walk in gratitude, you sustain what you have received. And when you trust God's timing, you live free from the frustration of comparison. Together, these virtues create an atmosphere where heaven recognizes your heart as ready for divine resources. There is a reason why some people seem to flourish wherever they go. It's not luck, it's alignment. Their hearts are in rhythm with heaven. They obey even when no one is watching. They give thanks when others complain. They trust when others panic. And because of this, their lives carry a fragrance of favor that money cannot buy. When your heart posture is right, you won't have to chase abundance. It will begin to chase you. Opportunities will find you. People will favor you. Doors will open not because you forced them, but because God Himself commanded the earth to yield increase on your behalf. Sometimes God withholds something not to punish you, but to protect you. You may think you're ready, but He sees what you cannot see. His delay is often His mercy in disguise. So instead of asking, when, God, begin to ask, what are you teaching me in this waiting? Every season of delay carries a lesson. Every dry season carries hidden growth. When you trust His process, you will look back and realize that He was never late. He was building something in you that abundance alone could not teach. So, when you pray for financial breakthrough, remember that true abundance starts in the heart. Let obedience become your foundation. Let gratitude become your daily language. Let trust become your posture, even when nothing seems to move. Because when your heart aligns with heaven, blessings will no longer come as accidents. They will come as rewards. God never ignores a heart that walks in surrender, thanks Him in lack, and waits in faith. That heart will always experience the overflow that this world cannot explain. Prayer is not a request for wealth. It's a declaration of faith that God is the ultimate provider. When we come before God in prayer, we are not begging for survival. We are positioning ourselves under divine supply. Prayer is not the language of desperation. It is the expression of confidence. It is saying, God, I know you see me. I know you hear me. And I know you have already made provision for every need. Many people approach prayer as if they are trying to convince God to bless them, as though He is reluctant to give. But the truth is, prayer is not about convincing God. It is about aligning yourself with His will, trusting that what He has already prepared will manifest in its time. When you pray about your finances, you are not merely asking for money. You are declaring that you recognize God as your source. Every business, every opportunity, every job, every connection is simply a channel. The moment you make the channel your source, you limit your provision. But when you make God your source, every channel becomes replaceable. The secret to lasting abundance is to understand that God is not bound to one method of blessing you. If one door closes, He can raise another in a place you never imagined. Prayer reminds your heart of this truth. It trains your spirit to depend on God, even when circumstances look dry. When a person prays from a place of faith, not fear, the atmosphere shifts. Heaven responds to confidence in God's character, not to panic in human weakness. There are those who pray with trembling hearts, unsure if their words reach beyond the ceiling. But there are also those who pray knowing that their Father delights in their trust. Faith-filled prayer does not come from seeing results. It comes from believing that God's word is final. It is written that before you call, He already knows what you need. And while you are yet speaking, He is already answering. That is the posture of a believer who prays not out of anxiety, but out of revelation. Money in itself is not evil, but the love of money makes prayer powerless. When the pursuit of wealth overshadows the pursuit of God, even prayer becomes mechanical. Many pray for abundance, but with hearts full of greed, envy, and comparison. Yet true prayer for provision begins with surrender. It says, God bless me, but keep my heart pure. Prosper me, but let my soul never forget you. When your motives are refined in prayer, your life becomes a magnet for divine favor. God trusts you with what He knows will not destroy you. Sometimes, when you pray for financial increase, God will not immediately release the money. Instead, He will release ideas, wisdom, and relationships that carry the seed of wealth. But many people miss this because they are expecting coins to fall from heaven instead of clarity to rise in their mind. Prayer opens your spiritual eyes. It allows you to perceive what ordinary eyes cannot see. It teaches you to recognize divine timing and divine instructions. Because in the kingdom, wealth is not stumbled upon, It is stewarded through revelation. Prayer births revelation, and revelation births multiplication. There are seasons when your prayers seem unanswered, when you cry for provision and the heavens feel silent. But faith reminds you that silence is not absence. In those quiet moments, God is working behind the scenes, aligning resources, preparing people, and shaping your capacity to receive. Prayer is the place where you are strengthened for the waiting. It transforms frustration into faith and worry into worship. It teaches your heart to say, even if I see nothing, I still believe something is happening. That is the language of faith. In prayer, you also break the hold of fear over your finances. Fear whispers, what if it doesn't work? Faith declares, even if it doesn't look like it now, it will come to pass. Fear says, you are running out. But faith says, God is still my provider. Fear focuses on scarcity, while faith focuses on the limitless abundance of heaven. That is why people who pray consistently begin to walk with quiet confidence. They know that their provision is not tied to the economy, not to a paycheck, not even to their abilities. It is tied to a covenant with the one who owns all things. Prayer also redefines success. It changes your goals from accumulation to purpose. When you pray rightly, you stop chasing money and start chasing assignment. You realize that God's blessing comes not just to make you comfortable, but to make you useful. Every time you kneel in prayer, God refines your desires. He teaches you to seek what matters most. Because sometimes what we call lack is really protection. God withholds certain things not to punish you, but to preserve your purpose. If you receive what you are not ready for, it can destroy you. Prayer ensures that your character grows as your blessings increase. When you declare in prayer that God is your provider, you are also declaring freedom from dependence on people. You stop begging for help and you start believing for favor. You stop comparing your path with others and you start walking your divine lane. That is what prayer does. It restores dignity, identity, and authority. It reminds you that you are not helpless. You are backed by the power of heaven. Even in moments of lack, prayer gives you vision. It gives you the strength to dream again, to start again, to believe again. Because abundance begins in the mind long before it appears in the hand. When your words align with faith, your atmosphere begins to shift. You stop speaking defeat and start speaking destiny. You stop complaining and start commanding. You stop counting what you lost and start declaring what God is about to release. Every time you pray about your finances, don't just ask, declare. Speak with the authority of a child who knows his father listens. Say, God, you are my provider. You are my source. You open doors no man can shut. You make rivers in the desert. And you bring increase where others see nothing. When you pray like that, heaven moves. Because prayer is not just sound, it is faith in motion. It is the heart saying, I know who holds my tomorrow. And even if it takes time, even if the results are slow, the man who prays never loses. Because every moment of prayer plants a seed in eternity. At the appointed time, those seeds bloom into testimonies. Prayer for provision is not a plea. It is a proclamation that God remains faithful, that His word still stands, and that no matter what the world says, the righteous will never be forsaken, nor his seed beg for bread. God's plan for prosperity is not about luxury, but purpose. He blesses to make you a blessing. Many people misunderstand the concept of divine prosperity because they equate it with the pursuit of material comfort and outward success. But in truth, the prosperity that comes from God carries a mission. It is not centered around greed or competition. It is rooted in divine assignment. When God blesses you, He has others in mind. Every increase, every open door, every promotion is designed to extend His goodness beyond your life. The wealth of heaven is purposeful. It comes to those whose hearts are willing to be channels, not reservoirs. When God blesses a person, it is never just about their comfort. It is about impact. From the very beginning, God's pattern has been clear. He said to Abraham, "I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing." That statement defines divine prosperity. Abraham was not chosen to hoard wealth, but to distribute it according to divine instruction. The more he obeyed, the more God entrusted him with. This shows that in the kingdom, prosperity is not measured by how much you keep, but by how much you can give without fear. It is the open hand that continues to receive, while the closed fist eventually runs dry. Luxury fades, but purpose endures. A person who builds their life around luxury alone will always find emptiness hiding behind the glitter. But when your abundance is tied to divine assignment, every blessing becomes meaningful. You find joy not just in what you own, but in what your obedience accomplishes. There is something sacred about knowing that your giving built a life, your generosity lifted a family, your faithfulness advanced a cause that honors God. That is prosperity that never loses its value. God does not oppose wealth. He opposes selfishness. The danger lies not in possession, but in obsession. When money becomes your master, it blinds you to purpose. But when you make God your master, He entrusts you with resources freely because He knows they won't corrupt you. Many people ask for abundance, yet their hearts are not ready to handle it. God blesses in measure to your maturity. When your motives are pure and your focus remains on kingdom purpose, you qualify for divine increase. Prosperity without purpose becomes a curse because it turns the heart away from the giver and toward the gift. But prosperity with purpose multiplies peace, joy, and fulfillment. In God's system, wealth is never random. It follows principles. He blesses the one who can manage and multiply resources for His glory. That is why you will often see that the most generous people continue to rise. The more they give, the more doors open, because giving is a reflection of divine nature. God is a giver. Everything He does flows from generosity. When your life mirrors that nature, you align yourself with the current of heaven. Blessings then become natural, not forced. Opportunities start to locate you because heaven recognizes you as a trusted steward. Divine prosperity is also about positioning. It's not just about what you have. It's about what you represent. When God raises you, He expects your influence to become light in dark places. He wants people to look at your life and see the evidence of His faithfulness. Your story becomes a message. The testimony of your rise should not point to your intelligence or hard work alone, but to the God who gave you strength and strategy. True prosperity gives glory back to its source. It doesn't boast, it reflects. It doesn't compete, it completes the work of heaven on earth. There are people who chase success all their lives only to discover that without purpose, success feels empty. They have possessions but no peace. They live in luxury but lack fulfillment. That's because divine prosperity cannot be enjoyed without alignment to the will of God. When you use what God gave you for your own pride, you step outside His pattern. But when you dedicate it to serving His vision, everything multiplies. The difference between selfish wealth and divine wealth is eternal impact. The former dies with you, the latter continues long after you are gone. God blesses people not to make them superior to others, but to make them useful. The reason He lifts one man is so that through him, many others can find light. When God prospers you, He expects your table to have space for others. He expects your abundance to comfort the needy, your wisdom to guide the lost, your resources to advance good works. That is how heaven measures success, not by accumulation, but by transformation. If your prosperity doesn't heal, build, or bless, it has missed its divine purpose. Sometimes God withholds blessings until your heart mature enough to handle them. He knows that prosperity without humility can destroy a person. That's why some seasons of delay are really seasons of preparation. God teaches you stewardship in the small before He entrusts you with the great. He teaches you generosity when you have little, so that when you have plenty, You won't forget the lessons of dependence. Prosperity is not a miracle you chase, it's a trust you earn through consistency, faith, and obedience. The highest form of wealth is not measured in gold, but in influence for good. A person walking in divine prosperity is not known by their possessions, but by their impact. You can have little and still be rich in purpose if your life touches others. And you can have much and still be poor in spirit if your abundance serves only yourself. God measures prosperity by how well His goodness flows through you. When your resources become an extension of His love, you begin to live the kind of prosperity that cannot be stolen or lost. When you pray for financial breakthrough, remember that what you're really asking for is capacity. You're asking God to trust you with something that has the power to build or destroy. Prosperity will always test the heart. It will expose motives and reveal priorities. That's why the journey toward true abundance must always pass through the fire of purpose. The person who endures that process emerges not only wealthy, but wise, humble, and generous. Because prosperity without character collapses, but prosperity anchored in purpose multiplies eternally. So when you ask God to bless you, don't just ask for increase, ask for direction. Ask Him to show you how your blessing will serve His will. Ask Him to keep your heart soft, your hands open, and your motives pure. Because when God sees that your desire is not luxury, but legacy, He releases abundance freely. For His plan for your life has never been about the size of your possessions, but the size of your purpose. Before a breakthrough manifests in the physical, it is first released in the spiritual realm through prayer and belief. Everything that appears in the natural begins as a seed in the unseen world. Nothing truly happens on earth without first being settled in the spirit. Many people struggle for years trying to change their circumstances with physical effort alone, yet see no lasting results. Because the foundation of breakthrough is spiritual. The visible world is only an echo of the invisible. Every promotion, every opportunity, every open door, every financial increase is first birthed in the realm of faith before it manifests in the realm of reality. When a person learns this truth, their life begins to shift. They stop reacting to what they see and start shaping what they cannot see. The key to lasting success is not in striving harder, but in believing deeper. The spiritual realm is where destinies are decided, where blessings are assigned, and where limitations are broken. It is the place where prayer becomes the bridge between what God has promised and what we experience. That is why prayer is not a religious routine. It is the process of bringing heaven's blueprint into earthly reality. When you pray, you are not informing God of your need. You are activating divine law. You are declaring, "Let it be on earth as it is in heaven." That phrase is not poetry. It is spiritual technology. It means that for every breakthrough you desire, there is already a version of it that exists in the spirit, waiting to be called forth. But belief is the currency that draws it from the unseen to the seen. Prayer without belief is noise, but belief without prayer is silence. When the two meet, creation responds. Heaven releases what your faith can hold. Many people think that a breakthrough happens suddenly, but in truth, it begins long before it is seen. A seed breaks before it sprouts. A caterpillar transforms before the butterfly emerges. Likewise, in the spirit, your breakthrough is already unfolding. Even when nothing seems to move, God is working. Angels are aligning opportunities, hearts are being stirred, and paths are being cleared. Just because you cannot see progress does not mean nothing is happening. The spiritual realm is often most active when the physical appears quiet. The moment you begin to pray in faith, something starts to shift. The problem is that most people give up before the process completes. They abandon their prayer at the point of pressure, not realizing that spiritual release always precedes physical manifestation. Belief is what sustains the waiting. It is easy to pray once, but true faith keeps speaking even when nothing changes. It says, I know it is already done, even if I don't see it yet. That kind of faith is what touches heaven. The woman who pressed through the crowd to touch the garment of the Master believed before she saw. Her healing did not begin when she touched him. It began when she believed she could. Every act of faith is a door that opens something eternal. When your belief aligns with divine will, you give God legal permission to manifest his power in your life. In the spiritual realm, words are not mere sound, they are seeds. Every time you speak in prayer, you are planting something that will grow in due season. That is why you must be careful with what you confess when you are waiting. Doubt uproots, but faith waters. Complaining delays, but gratitude accelerates. When you choose to keep speaking life, even in delay, you build spiritual momentum. Heaven recognizes consistency. God honors those who keep showing up in faith, because that is the language of trust. Before any breakthrough, there is always resistance. The enemy knows that if you ever receive what has been released in the Spirit, his hold over that area of your life will be broken. That is why he attacks the place of belief. He whispers doubt, fear, and discouragement. He tries to convince you that nothing is happening, that prayer is useless, that waiting is a waste. But if only you could see in the Spirit, you would realize that every moment of prayer builds power. Every tear, every word, every moment of faith is a deposit in the unseen. And when the appointed time comes, the heavens open, and what you have been carrying in prayer suddenly appears. Even Jesus taught that before anything manifests, it must first be declared in faith. When he stood before the tomb of Lazarus, he gave thanks before the miracle occurred. Gratitude was his act of belief. He knew that resurrection had already been released in the Spirit. He only needed to call it forth. That is the mystery of divine manifestation. You don't wait to see before you believe. You believe until you see. Many times, people pray but doubt cancels their own words. They ask God for provision, but in the next breath, they speak fear. They declare that they trust him, yet live as though he will not come through. Faith is not merely what you say in prayer, it is what you continue to believe after you've said it. To walk in breakthrough, you must learn to hold your confession steady. The spiritual realm responds to consistency. When your heart, your words, and your actions all agree, creation itself begins to cooperate with you. The greatest battles in life are not fought with hands, but with hearts that refuse to give up. Before any great move of God, there is always a season of pressing. It is like a woman in labor. She feels pain, pressure, and resistance, but the child is already alive within her. That is how spiritual birth works. Your prayer creates what you cannot yet touch. Your belief nurtures it. And when the time comes, the invisible becomes visible. And everyone calls it a miracle, not knowing how many nights you labored in prayer to bring it forth. So, when you are praying for a financial breakthrough, for healing, or for open doors, remember this: it is already released in the Spirit. Your job is to keep believing until it takes form in the natural. Faith is the bridge that carries blessings from heaven to earth. You may not know the hour or the method, but rest assured. The moment you prayed, heaven recorded it. The moment you believed, it began. Every breakthrough you seek has already been spoken in the unseen. Your persistence in faith is what draws it into reality. Before anything changes around you, it must first change within you. Because once the victory is won in the Spirit, nothing can stop it from manifesting in your life.